Hello! Okay, for those of you returning, welcome back. For those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video or channel, then thank you for joining me. Here is my spoiler-free review of The Monkey, directed and written by Osgood Perkins, who also directed the very good Longlegs, one of my favourite movies of last year, so I've been really looking forward to The Monkey. It's an adaptation of a Stephen King short story from 1980, I believe. I've never read it, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. But as I was such a fan, I absolutely loved what Osgood Perkins did with Longlegs. I was really looking forward to this, but like I said, I really didn't know what to expect when it came to the story of The Monkey, other than it having perhaps very sort of familiar themes, you know, when it comes to a Stephen King story. So, the plot of The Monkey follows twin brothers whose lives are turned upside down by a cursed toy monkey that causes random horrific deaths. I absolutely loved the look of this movie. I think Osgood Perkins does a beautiful job at kind of really, through the cinematography, through the lighting, through the use of the camera, in bringing to life a very eerie, creepy atmosphere. And for those of you that are familiar with his previous movie Longlegs, when it comes to sort of the look, the atmosphere, just the sort of the colour palette, the lighting, it is quite similar. And I loved it. I loved how he brought this kind of very dark, creepy world, this very eerie world to life. And it's that kind of contrast between how it looks, sort of alongside the humour, which is what really kind of, for me anyway, as well as how the humour within this movie is written, is what allows this movie, for the most part, to really work. It's that kind of contrast between how it's all brought to life from a visual and a technical perspective, accompanied with sort of the comedic aspect of its story. It works beautifully together, and it's, like I said, for the most part, it works very, very well. I found this movie to be very entertaining. It made me chuckle a couple of times. Like, the humour within this film, it's black comedy, and it was right up my street. And you could kind of sense that they were having fun as well in crafting these moments, these sort of the horror set pieces. They're very bloody, they're very gory, and there are moments that really kind of made me turn away from the screen. But it's also very funny at the same time. But it's black humour, and the way it's done and the way it's executed within those moments, it's what makes them really effective when it comes to the humour. And not only am I looking away in disgust, but I'm also laughing at the same time. And that's a real I think that's a real talent to pull off when it comes to horror and comedy, really. And, you know, this is a very different beast, for example, compared to something like Heart Eyes. Again, a movie that does it very well. But you've got a sort of a different tone, a different style of humour, and it works pretty well. And the movie is very aware of itself. It knows exactly what it is, what it wants to do. You know, it's about death and the fear of dying, and, you know, generational trauma as well. And it's not interested in getting kind of bogged down by that kind of the sort of the emotional weight of those themes, but instead it wants to have a laugh. It's one of those movies, it's one of those experiences that wants you to sort of have a laugh about it. And I think, you know, it does that very well. I mean, this could easily be a very sad, a very emotionally deep movie. And it's not one of those experiences, but you get it in sort of very kind of brief, small moments that are dotted throughout the film with these characters, wherever it'll be sort of the twins with a mother. It's a brilliant scene, in fact, just after the funeral. And the actress playing the mother is a Tatiana Maslany. I think that's how you pronounce the name. I may have butchered that there. But she plays Hal and Bill's mother. And she is incredible in this movie. And there's a moment with the two boys, with her two sons, and she's just sort of talking about death. And it's incredibly... It's sad, but it's also very funny. And a lot of it is aided down to how Tatiana sort of really kind of just brings the character to life in this moment and how she delivers the lines. There's almost a kind of a dash of Tim Burton in there. I think there were certain moments that kind of had a very kind of Tim Burton vibe a little bit when it came to the humour. That might just be me, but this is a movie and it's very aware of it. You know, it knows, like I said, what it wants to be. It has those kind of very sort of deep, very human, emotional themes, but this is not the film, this is not the experience. You know, it's obvious that Osgood Perkins' intentions with telling this story wasn't to get bogged down by the emotional weight of those themes, and it does a pretty good job at that. Like I said, I mean, the comedy within this film, the humour, did work for the most part for me until it didn't. And what I mean by this is, the first half of this movie, the first 2 acts are solid. They're very well done. I mean, going back to just that comedic element and how it works alongside the horror and just how it's constructed, it's very precision-like. And a lot of that is aided by the editing and how it's shot and how it all just sort of plays out. It is beautifully done. But by the time we get into the 3rd act and we sort of come closer to the story's conclusion, everything starts to feel quite clunky and messy, right down to that comedic element of the story. It kind of almost takes a shift in tone. Like, I still found it enjoyable. I was still very much entertained and I was having a good time. But it was quite obvious, it was quite evident that as we sort of transition into that last portion of the movie, that just everything from sort of every kind of element, just how everything sort of just came together from sort of the character's story, sort of that comedic element, it just all kind of felt very clunky and messy. But like I said, I still had a good time with this. I had a blast. It just gets to a point where the humour stops working as a result of that kind of clunkiness and messiness that we do get in the 3rd act. But like I said, it didn't really stop me from not being entertained, though I do feel like it kind of gets swallowed up due to that shift in sort of the direction of the humour and how that humour is constructed. Well, it's just how the overall 3rd act is constructed and comes together. It's almost like it kind of just gets swallowed up by its humour, and then I'm sort of kind of missing perhaps the character element of its story, which might sound like I'm contradicting myself here, because obviously, you know, the movie, it's very aware of itself and it doesn't want to be one of those movies where it gets sort of bogged down by the emotional weight of what it's exploring with its themes. But I still found myself missing sort of certain aspects of the characters that I just felt like it was lacking. Like, I'll be honest, I never really cared about the characters within this story, but I just couldn't help but be compelled, but be entertained by what was happening within the frame. But I never really once found myself really emotionally rooted or caring about what was happening with these characters. And that is a minor gripe from me, really. I also dug the score. I thought the score in this film was amazing, because again, it's music that kind of really brings to life not only the horror element of the story, but the comedic side of it. And it blends the two elements beautifully. And it really does aid a lot of sort of the creepiness, the horror, and sort of that kind of black comedy aspect of its story in a way that is just beautifully done. And it's like, it's quite bombastic at times, but it works. It's never too much. And it, like I said, it really kind of just helps and aids in those moments when it comes to sort of the comedic element of what they are trying to achieve within certain moments. Anido van Breeman, I think that's how you pronounce the name. He is the composer here for the monkey, and I absolutely dug it. It's one of those soundtracks actually that I'm hoping to get on vinyl. A great score. The film also does a really good job at kind of tapping into this nostalgia of being a kid again, of, you know, having that kind of very overactive imagination, and just how you would sort of overthink little things. And even as a kid, when you're sort of introduced to sort of the idea of death and what death means, and that but the fact that death is there. And like as a kid, when you sort of really sort of dwell on things, I mean, we dwell on things all through our life, but especially as kids with this sort of active imagination, and you'd sort of associate it with stupid little things. Like if you didn't do a certain thing, and then that might have sort of severe consequences, even though it wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? But it was just that sort of that kind of imagination, sort of at play, and sort of that kind of the superstition and sort of the and how that would play into sort of the what if. And it does a good job of kind of tapping into that. And it did sort of take me back to being a kid. And again, just going back to how it balances sort of the deeper themes of the horror along with the comedy. I mean, there's a moment that did sort of remind me of sort of having those moments where, yeah, you would sit down and think, fuck, I'm going to die at some point. And then it's alleviated then by that kind of the humour within sort of that moment. And it does sort of then does what it needs to do, remind you, fuck, we just gotta fucking enjoy ourselves while we're here and have a bit of fucking fun. And that is what this movie does very, very well. It's not perfect. I do have issues with character. I kind of wanted a bit more with character. Like I said, I never really cared or got emotionally behind the brothers, but all of the performances from all of the cast are great. Like, we've got some really strong, great performances here. Yeah, I just had a really good time with this movie. I have issues, especially when it comes to the third act, and just how everything sort of comes together. It is quite clunky, but I just couldn't help but be entertained. It's very clever at what it is doing with the horror, the themes, and that comedy element of the story. And I think Osgood Perkins does pretty much a really strong, solid job at bringing that element, that aspect of the film to life. As I said, in the third act, it does somewhat shift slightly in tone and in how it's executed, but I still had a good time. So yeah, that's enough rambling on from me. They are my thoughts on the monkey, and I will be giving the monkey They are my thoughts on the monkey. But what did you all think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews, I'm just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. I do plan on doing a movie talk discussion video over the weekend. I really want to express my thoughts and share my thoughts with you all on the recent news of Amazon taking creative control over James Bond. I'm quite passionate about James Bond. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Bond. I mean, they are a series of films, along with many others, that kind of really just fueled my love for film. And I have a lot to say about this. And I've watched a lot of other people's videos, and by doing that, it's actually allowed me to perhaps come down from the ceiling a little bit, if that's one way of putting it. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first heard or read the announcement, I was severely disappointed. Is one way of putting it. But yeah, I'll have that happen live on the channel by Sunday evening the latest. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you to everyone that have connected to the channel, whether it be liking, commenting, subscribing. It means so much. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.